in the metal structures of the ship. Can you imagine if this really happened, you guys? So they're using this like electrical, like generators, magnetic field in order to make this ship become invisible. And it almost becomes invisible with this green smoke. Everybody's getting nauseous. These Navy ship crew members, they're just working. They're just out there working on the deck, and they don't know why this green fog comes up, and they become very nauseous. The people that are performing this like experiment are like, whoa, this almost worked. Let's try it again. And when they do, and this magnetic field goes around this boat again, or this ship, when the ship comes back, some of the crew members are embedded in the metal structure of the ship. This is when allegedly like very, very, very serious side effects started taking over the crew. Some of the crew members were even said to have been physically fused to bulkheads, while others suffered from very serious mental disorders. Some rematerialized inside out, and others completely vanished forever. This drove them completely insane. It is also claimed that the ship's crew may have been subjected to brainwashing to maintain the secrecy of this experiment. Now again, the U.S. Navy completely denies this, and it's far out there to think about it. But also, when you think about, man, if 100 years ago, somebody would have told you that you could hold literally a metal rectangle in your hand and talk to somebody on the other side of the world anytime you want, people 100 years ago would have been like, okay, that's crazy. No. One day, you're going to be able to fly thousands of feet in the sky and watch TV and take a shower in like an airplane, and people would be like, oh yeah, right, you're crazy, but yet here we are, okay? Phil says that when his father passed away in 1993, that this is when he discovered original letters in his basement that allegedly proved that the Philadelphia experiment actually happened. Because remember, like we talked about in the beginning, allegedly Phil's father worked on this experiment. They also allegedly proved that Oscar Schneider, Phil's father, had been a participant after the crew members had been quarantined in a Virginia psychiatric ward. So after they got the crew members that allegedly came back and was at least in one piece, they took them all to a psychiatric ward, and Phil's father was one of the military representatives that went to the psychiatric ward to be a part of that. And if that ain't far out enough, allegedly Captain Schneider, Phil's father, actually autopsied the bodies of the crew members as they died and found alien implants in their arms, legs, behind their eyes, and deep inside their brains. Phil said that this was evidence that either by accident or on purpose, aliens were involved in the Philadelphia experiment and may have been responsible for its failure. While Phil was giving these lectures, he wasn't just out freely giving these lectures and telling people about these experiments and these things that happened and things that he's seen. Again, working for the government for 17 years, okay? It wasn't just going smooth. They weren't just leaving him alone. According to Phil, in his lectures, he was being threatened, okay? He was being chased. He had been run off of the road multiple times, and he really felt like they were out to get him. Well, Phil felt like it was his duty to continue to share, and he went on to keep giving his lectures. However, 2 years into giving his lectures, something terrible happened to Phil. On January 17th of 1996, Phil was found dead in his apartment, where he had apparently been dead there for several days to even a week. His body was found in a very unusual position. His feet were like under his bed. His head was actually in the seat of his wheelchair, and the rest of his body was on the floor with his hands by his side. It was also said that there was blood that was found on his wheelchair. However, when you looked at Phil's body, there was no open wounds where that could have came from. And initially, when he was found, it was ruled that he had died from a stroke or a heart attack. But then when his body was taken to the funeral home, the mortician noticed that a catheter tube was wrapped around his neck 3 times and tied off. Now, let me just set the scene for you guys a little bit better, okay? Nobody had heard from Phil, okay? He's in his apartment. he's in a wheelchair. He's missing a leg. He's missing, the 3 fingers on one hand. He's been cut up. He's been through all these different things. He's been saying somebody is chasing him, and he knew that they were out to get him. Nobody had heard from him. So when somebody arrived to his apartment and found him deceased, he had already been deceased from 4 days to a week, and his body was bloated. So when first responders came in, at first they just saw his bloated body on the ground. They could not see that his catheter was embedded in his neck, wrapped around it 3 times, and tied off. Okay, so initially his death was immediately ruled a heart attack or a stroke. But after the mortician ended up finding his catheter wrapped around his neck, then the investigation changed the cause of death to end it all by strangulation. So it went from him having a stroke or a heart attack to him ending his own life by strangulation, by him wrapping his own catheter 3 times around his neck and tying it off, which, mind you, I listened to a very long interview by one of his very best friends who said that because of his hands, first of all, everybody that knew him, his wife, his best friend, I listened to his wife speak too, they all said he would not have done this. We'll get more to that in a second. But the best friend said that because of him missing those 3 fingers and there's no way he could have wrapped it around and tied it the way that it was tied. Anyways, now, from when this first happened, Phil's ex-wife, Cynthia, said that the circumstances surrounding Phil's death was very suspicious. Now, even though the 2 of them had a divorce, they were still very close, and they were like best friends. So when Cynthia had found out that he passed away and she called down to the funeral home to find out information, first of all, they would not let her see his body at all. No matter what she did, they never let her see his body, which she thought was suspicious, but, okay, what are you going to do? When she was going over the autopsy report, she saw that the way that they talked about Phil's genitals was completely wrong because he had had an injury there too. I'm not going to get into too many details, but the autopsy report stated that it was completely intact. And when she saw that, she knew that either whoever did this autopsy on him was either completely incompetent or they didn't really do it, and they were just kind of going through the motions.
When they came to the penis, they said nothing unusual or abnormal. Well, that was the red flag right there. As his ex-wife, who gave me a copy of the autopsy report, it says, as soon as I read that, it says I knew that either the doctor was totally incompetent or that wasn't Phil's body. I said, why? He had severe, obvious stitching. He had had a severe infection years before. His wife told me the story, and which they had to literally cut it open from one end to the other in order to clean out the infection and then sew it up.
And none of that was present.
According to the autopsy, none of that was present.
And she also said that in the state of Oregon, when a person passes away in a home, an investigation immediately has to happen. But because they ruled it an ending of it all, they didn't do like a full investigation at first. So she started to dig. And she actually had a statement. She went on to say the reasons why she believed that her husband's life was taken and not by him. She said, number 1, there was no goodbye note, and that Philip had actually always told his friends and family that if he ever passed away from ending it all, you automatically knew that he had been murdered. She also said that when she went to his house, all of his lecture materials, all of his alien materials and his higher math books and his photographs of the UFOs, the notes that he had for his alien book agenda, all of it was missing. So all of that was missing out of his house, even stuff that had to do with his father. You guys remember we just talked about his father with the whole Philadelphia experiment? Whoever came into his house took all of that information. But everything else that was in his apartment was still there, including lots of gold coins, his wallet, hundreds of dollars, tons of jewelry, mineral specimens, and a lot of other things. So whoever came to his house didn't come there to rob it for money. They came there and took all of his documents. She also said that no coroner ever came out to his apartment after his body was found. And again, that is against the Oregon law. And she also said that the police never took into consideration all of those items that were missing from his apartment. She also said that the medical examiner took blood and urine samples at the autopsy, but refused to analyze them, saying that the county would not waste their money on like this type of testing because this was an ending of it all. She said that she insisted, and when they allegedly took these samples, they let her know it was going to take up to 12 months, and at 11 months, they were missing. The samples were gone, and nobody could find them. She also said that Philip had missing fingers on his left hand and he had limited motion in his shoulders. She said that knowing her ex-husband for as long as she did and everything he had been through, she believed that it was physically impossible for him to have held that rubber hose in his left hand with his missing fingers and wrap it around his neck and his shoulders 3 times. She said that the way that he was found laying, that even if by some miracle he could have wrapped it around him, he would have had to have been sitting on the edge of the bed in a certain way. I mean, you think about it, like if he's wrapping it around, then he's starting to pass out, he's going to let go of it, right? But it just doesn't even make any sense. She also said that her husband, Philip, was an expert in chemicals and his own medical needs, and that he had multiple pills at hand that he could have just quickly ended his life with, quickly and painlessly if he wanted to. And he also had a 9mm firearm that he had borrowed to protect himself because he had had all these people following him and running him off the road. So why in the world would he himself in such an unusual manner? She also said that even with everything else Philip knew and talked about, he was very religious and that he did not believe in ending his own life. He struggled every day not to die. He fought to live. Everything that he had been through, he wanted to live. And he felt like the lectures that he gave was making a difference and that he was really looking forward to giving more. She said, in fact, that Philip was scheduled for another lecture tour that started on January 16th of 1996 in Tampa, Florida. She also said that he had just found a friend that was going to help him write this book about the New World Order all the way back in the 1990s. He knew something, or that he believed, that he learned working with the government about the New World Order, and that he also loved spending time with his daughter, and he just would never do that. Cynthia is actually still fighting to have Phil's death certificate changed to reflect that he was murdered, and that she hopes that things that were stolen from Phil's apartment can be returned one day to his daughter Marie. Lastly, she also said that she hopes that the world will come to know the truth about aliens, UFOs, the government cover-ups, black budgets, and how they're affecting everyday people. So what do I think? I think that Phil's story is very interesting. I definitely believe that he saw some things, and I believe that he believed everything that he said. I also believe that there are secrets going on in that part of the world, in Dulce, New Mexico, and I do believe that there's a base there. And one of the things that really makes me believe that there's something going on there is the locals that live there. There's so many interviews from the people that live there, that have been there for their whole entire lives, that have seen things. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it is secret government base where they're doing all kinds of experiments underground. I don't know what's going on there, but I definitely believe something is going on down there. And I believe it's dark. And I believe it's probably not good. What do you guys think? Have y'all heard about Phil Schneider? Have you heard about his story? There are so many people's stories like this. Is everybody lying? Does everybody have issues? I don't know. He was diagnosed, allegedly, with schizophrenia, but also at the same time, a lot of people that come out and say these things get labeled as certain mental illnesses. So what do you think? Y'all let me know what